welcome to our English news edition coming to you from Canal, Algérie. Coming up next. The President of the Republic receives the heads of delegations participating in the proceedings of the International Forum on the Right of Citizens to Constitutional Justice. The President of the Republic receives the coordinator for the Middle Eastern and North African Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council, Mr. Brett McGurk. The former president of the Algerian Football League, Mahfoud Karbaji, passes away, and the President of the Republic sends on the occasion a condolences message to the late's family. And the teachers joined the protest movement in Morocco despite the repressive policy of the Makhzen regime. Good evening, those were the headlines. First, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Tuesday the heads of delegations participating in the first International Forum on the Right of Citizens in the Constitutional Justice in light of the comparative systems. President Tebboune received the President of the Constitutional Court of Angola, the President of the African Court of Human and People's Rights, the former President of the Constitutional Court of Benin, the Vice President of the Constitutional Court of Benin, the Dean of the members of the Constitutional Court of Mauritania, the Judge of the Russian Constitutional Court, the Judge of the Constitutional Court of South Korea, the Judge of the Constitutional Court of Indonesia, the Vice President of the Constitutional Court of Palestine, the Vice President of the Constitutional Court of Turkey, as well as the President of the High Constitutional Court of Egypt. The audience took place in the presence of Omar Belhaj, the President of the Constitutional Court, the Principal Private Secretary of the Presidency, Abdelaziz Khalaf, and the advisor to the President of the Republic in charge of legal and judicial affairs. Later on, the President of the Republic took a souvenir photo with the heads of delegations participating in the first International Forum on the Right of the Citizen in the Constitutional Justice. In a related context, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received the coordinator for the Middle Eastern and North African Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council, Mr. Brett McGurk, who was accompanied by the Chief Assistant to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Yael Lambert. The meeting was attended on the Algerian side by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ramtal Amamra, Boumediene Ben Attou, the President's advisor in charge of affairs related to defense and security, as well as Major General Mhenna Jabbar, the General Director of Documentation and Security. Following the audience, Mr. Brett McGurk had this to say.
It's very good to be here in Algiers, and we had a very productive, very informative, very constructive meeting with the President and his team. We have a lot to work on together. I think our partnership is very strong. We talked about the situation in Europe, particularly gas to Europe. We talked about the situation here in North Africa, and working to strengthen our partnerships here across the region, which we're very much doing, and look forward to the year ahead. Thank you.
For his part, the Army General Said Chingareha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, equally received the coordinator for the Middle Eastern and North African Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council, Mr. Brett McGurk, and the Chief Assistant to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of the State for Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Yael Lambert. During this meeting, attended by several high-ranking officials of the National People's Army and National Defense Ministry, and members of the U.S. military military delegations. The two parties discussed the bilateral cooperation between the two countries and the means to further consolidate it. The meeting was also an opportunity to exchange analysis and tackle issues of common interest. In other news, the former president of the Algerian Professional Football League, Mahfoud Karbaji, passed away on Tuesday at the age of 69 following a long illness. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, presented his condolences to the family of the late in a message that read the following: "The will of Allah wanted Mahfoud Karbaji to leave us. With his death, we lose one of the distinguished figures who has enriched his long sports career by achieving the missions entrusted to him with full competence. He was a faithful manager to the sports ethics and development of football, as proven by his experience, skills and patriotism shown through the different responsibilities he assumed, namely as the director of the official printing house. In this painful ordeal, I present to you and to the family of sports my most sincere condolences and deepest feelings of compassion, praying Allah Almighty to welcome him in his vast paradise," concluded the President of the Republic. On behalf of the President of the Republic, the Chairman of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goujil, signed the condolences register of the Chinese Embassy following the death of the former President of the People's Republic of China, Jiang Zemin. Accompanied by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Goujil affirmed that the late was behind great achievements, and with his death, Algeria lost a great friend. His memory will remain forever in the history of the strategic cooperation between the two countries. And the debates regarding the 2023 finance law continued on Tuesday at the premises of the Council of the Nations here in the capital, Algiers. This took place during a plenary session chaired by the President of the Senate, Salah Goujil, in the presence of the Finance Minister and other members of the government. On Tuesday, it was for the presidents of parliamentary groups to intervene. They agreed to value the provisions of the text to support the purchasing power, rationalize expenditures, and promote investment. The proceedings of the first international forum organized by the Constitutional Court came to an end. Both the Algerian and foreign constitutional experts expressed their appreciation concerning Algeria's efforts and considered its expertise in this sector as a model to follow. Melissa Kubash will tell us more.
The foreign constitutional experts took part during this event and discussed questions related to the right of citizen and the constitutional justice to defend his rights and freedoms via the mechanisms established in their countries. It is worth recalling that this international forum comes after a year of the creation of the Constitutional Court within the framework of the 2020 constitutional revision, which enshrined the principles of democracy and independence of justice. Before the creation of the court, the judiciary used to practice what we call the jurisdiction of refrain from execution, meaning if a text is presented to the judge and he sees that it collides with a constitutional principle, he has the right to not execute it. The Constitutional Court in Benin is considered as an important pole due to its responsibilities and its role in protecting the citizens' rights. It is made by referral from the Supreme Court. This mechanism is considered a citizen's right to appeal a legislative or regulatory text that he claims violates his rights and freedoms ensured by the Constitution.
يدعي بأنه ينتهك حقوقه وحرياته التي يضمنها له الدستور.
During the discussions, the participants considered the Algerian experience as a model and highlighted its efforts to establish the state of law and freedoms.
The Constitutional Court of Algeria.
We thank Algeria and the Constitutional Court for allowing us to participate in this forum that allowed us to know its experience in this sector. The Algerian Constitutional Court clarified the law through this forum. Any constitutional judge could benefit from it in his court.
في محكمته فيما يتعلق في طريقة الوصول إلى العدالة الدستورية أو المحكمة الدستورية.
For their part, the Algerian experts appreciated the high position granted by the Constitution to the Constitutional Court. As for the forum, it wound up with a report that clarified the main points discussed during the event, alongside a number of suggestions.
The Constitutional Court was one of the commitments of the President of the Republic, one of the achievements for the consolidation of the rule of law and the consecration of democracy during the past 3 years. A look back at the most important measures taken by the head of state for the economic recovery and the harmonious political transition with Ines Kilo.
Algeria has succeeded over the last 3 years under the supreme chairmanship of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, in implementing a pioneering democratic and development experience based on harmonious political transition in accordance with constitutional principles and popular will, as well as an economic recovery based on strengthening national capacities and launching youth initiatives and energies. It is an experience praised by several international bodies, organizations and specialized research centers, which praised the positive results of the reform projects initiated by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, after his election through a global strategy based on a clear political vision. The main project was launched to restore the state power by completing institutional edification in parallel with ethics of public life, fighting corruption and devoting the independence of justice, which continues its war against all those who undermine institutions. Thus, the country, with its institutions and constitutional bodies, has taken a step that reveals the features of a new Algeria confident in the future. More than 80% of the 54 commitments made by the President of the Republic have been fulfilled. The country has taken important steps forward and is moving steadily towards a promising future. The edification process took place in record time and in light of a difficult geopolitical and economic situation, and the President of the Republic paved the way by launching consultations with all political, economic and social partners with the aim of reaching a consensus on important national issues and forming a national front to face the challenges facing Algeria. It is an approach that was praised by members of the State of the United Nations Human Rights Council in November, noting that Algeria's success in building a solid institutional base to promote the basic rights and public freedoms. The President of the Republic affirmed that the social nature of the state is firm conviction that we will not abandon through measures to support the purchasing power of the citizen despite the difficult economic situation coinciding with the global health crisis. President Tebboune promised that the year 2023 will be accompanied by new measures for the benefit of the ordinary citizen who remains the priority of the state's concerns. The 2023 draft finance law has strengthened social achievements through its provisions aimed at improving the purchasing power of the citizen, maintaining subsidies for basic and largely consumed products, and increasing salaries without introducing new taxes. The practical measures taken to combat all forms of speculation, a heavy burden on the citizen's shoulder, have helped to redress the situation after the stabilization of supply operations and the availability of products. President Tebboune also ordered the preparation of the implementation texts relating to increase in salaries, retirement grants, and unemployment allowances to be enjoyed by citizens as from January 2023.
And the proceedings of the first African Conference for Startups held in the International Conference Center, Abdelatif Rahal, here in Algiers, came to an end on Tuesday. This conference was crowned with the Algiers Declaration of African Startups, a cornerstone for a roadmap that includes procedures and decisions, the first of their kind in the continent, relating to innovation and entrepreneurship. And in order to embody the outcomes of this conference, it was agreed upon on creating national contact points and form a permanent secretariat for the African Conference for Startups in order to follow up and activate the roadmap. The idea of establishing an African Ministerial Council in charge of startups in the African Union was also adopted to be a space for official dialogue. In another development, a memorandum of understanding was signed on Tuesday between the Sonatrach Group and Honeywell. The agreement was signed by the Central Director of Procurement and Logistics of Sonatrach and the General Director of North Africa, Honeywell Performance Materials and Technologies, in the presence of Sonatrach's CEO, Tawfiq Hakkar, and the CEO of Honeywell Middle East and North Africa, Mohammed Muhisen. This agreement aims to promote cooperation between the two parties, notably exchange expertise in terms of technological mastery. And the Moroccan cities are the scene of daily protests, which are repressively faced by the security to silence any opponent to this regime. Ines Killu has a full story.
Yesterday, the inhabitants of Gersif in eastern Morocco demonstrated against the deterioration of their socio-economic conditions and the arbitrary arrest of political opponents. The demonstrators chanted slogans demanding the immediate release of all political detainees and prisoners of conscience, stressing that these arrests are part of the blockade unjustly imposed by the Mahsen regime. The protesters also denounced the way in which the opponents' files have been fabricated to cover up the economic and political failure of the Mahsen regime, calling for accountability of those responsible for these repeated violations and for an end to arbitrary arrest in Morocco. In addition, the demonstrators denounced the deterioration in living conditions, widespread poverty and the high prices of fuel and raw materials, which greatly affect the purchasing power of the population. The people of Gersif have risen up against poverty and marginalization they face. The same protest atmosphere in Rabat. Thousands of citizens, several political trade union and human rights organizations organized demonstrations to denounce this rise in prices, an increase that has brought 2/3 of the Moroccan population into a state of extreme poverty.
And one of the sectors seriously affected by the repressive Mahsen regime is the contractual teachers detained for holding peaceful demonstrations to snatch the right of being hired permanently. Story by Najah Diyar.
In Morocco, the education sector is in turmoil. Hundreds of contractual teachers have taken to the streets to denounce the glaring inequalities of which they have been victims for years. We are here with our colleagues to demand our rights. The Higher Education Ministry ignored our most basic claims and refused to check the files of the contractuals who simply asked to be permanently hired. Revolted and tired of the Mahsen fake promises, the Moroccan teachers are determined to continue their demonstrations. We are here to keep our brave demonstrations going and to denounce the false speeches of the Mahsen that bring no solution to our problems, especially concerning the teachers' integration in the public service. We won't stop our demonstrations until the end. The protest movements continue to gain ground, sparing no sector. The Moroccans are more than ever willing to bring back justice and to carry out their fight for dignity, condemning what they qualify as an act of contempt towards the legitimate grievances of depriving people of their most basic rights.
The regional director in charge of material and immaterial heritage, Sliman Hashi, indicated during a press conference that the Algerian music genre of Array is officially in the UNESCO's World Heritage List. This recognition is the outcome of strenuous efforts made over the past years. And with that, our today's news edition comes to a close. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.